Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this Saturday to listen to my talk. I'm really sorry that I can't do a live presentation because 2 o'clock is kind of when our power goes off. And I didn't want to risk being on a laptop and have, my internet signal kind of die on me or the laptop die on me. So I'm recording it, but I will be available for the Q&A session. So hopefully you guys will have questions for me when I show my face. So I'm gonna share the screen now and get to the presentation. Okay. There we go. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the conservation of Colombo's urban fishing cats and their wetland habitats. To start off, let's talk a bit about the fishing cat. They are a vulnerable species under the IUCN Red List of 2016, and they are listed as endangered under the National Red List of 2012. They are also protected under the Flora and Fauna Protection Ordinance. As adults, fishing cats are about the size of an average sized street dog and can weigh between 8 to 16 kilos. In Sinhala, they are known as the Handun Divya, and in Tamil, they are known as Meen Piti Pune or Kodu Pulli. The species are found in South and Southeast Asia, and these countries include Sri Lanka, of course, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Thailand. They are predominantly a nocturnal species, but have been seen active during the day, very rare sightings, but it can happen. Mainly, it's cats kind of returning to their den sites after a long night of, marking territory and hunting, or kind of catching a last-minute snack before bed, or females with overactive, hyperactive kittens. Fishing cats are also highly dependent on water and are typically found in wetland and mangrove habitats. And thanks to these numerous sources of water throughout Sri Lanka, these include our ancient man-made lakes up in the dry zone. Fishing cats can be found almost throughout the country, and that's why we kind of consider Sri Lanka as a stronghold for the species. This is also probably why fishing cats call Colombo home. Colombo itself is a city with very deep connections to wetlands. The city itself was built on a wetland when the Portuguese arrived in the 1500s. Before that, it was a small fishing village at the edge of this coastal mangrove. Currently, Colombo has a 20 square kilometer wetland cover within the metropolitan region. And this region includes the Colombo Municipal Council, the Dehiwala Mount Lavinia Municipal Council, Sri Jayawardhanapura Kotte Municipal Council, and the Kolonava Urban Council. In 2018, we were given Ramsar Wetland City accreditation for our conservation and wise use of urban and peri-urban wetlands, as well as the sustainable socio-economic benefits these wetlands have for, or rather to, the local people. We were also 1 out of 16 cities that were given this accreditation and the only capital city that got it. So why are wetlands important to us? Mainly due to flood protection. They absorb enough water to fill up 27,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. They help reduce air temperature. They help with mitigating climate change. For example, they store approximately 1.43 million metric tons of carbon, which is equivalent to 90% of Colombo's annual carbon emissions. They also provide livelihoods and provide food security for the people living within the city. These wetlands are also important to biodiversity. For example, we have 252 species of flora, including one critically endangered climber, which I can't remember the name of the species, but I can maybe post it later. We also have 277 species of fauna. And these include the land snails, aquatic snails, dragonflies, typo there, sorry about that, butterflies, freshwater fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So that's a lot of wildlife that we are sharing this city with, and it's incredible considering considering the fact that it's Colombo. No one really thinks about this, so it's pretty amazing. So what are the types of urban wildlife that we have? There are 4 main types, and this includes human obligates, which are domestic animals, and this which range from your dogs, cats, poultry, and livestock like Chutidua here. These animals are known to compete with native wildlife. For example, free-roaming domestic cats on islands like ours have caused or contributed towards 14% of modern bird, mammal, and reptile extinctions. And in the US alone, it's estimated that 1.3 to 4 billion birds and 6.3 to 22.3 billion mammals are killed by domestic cats annually. And because of this, I have prevented my mother from letting her cats leave the house. They are now 24/7 indoor cats, and neither my mother or the cats have died from depression like they said they would if I prevented them from leaving the house. So yeah, everyone's fine. Human obligates are also known to spread disease to native wildlife, diseases such as rabies, and feline and canine panleukopenia. Next, we've got the human associates and exploiters, and these include generalist species and omnivores. So we've got your crows, your civets, your mongoose, insects, and most birds. These animals take advantage of anthropogenic resources like food and shelter, and due to that, they are able to reach very high population densities. So think about your palm squirrels and think about your rats. We also have a very love-hate relationship with these animals due to the fact that they are pretty much everywhere. Then you've got your human adapters, which include generalists, again, omnivores and carnivores. Species like porcupines, civets, jackals, monitors, and crocs. These species are able to utilize anthropogenic resources and survive in human-dominated landscapes, though they don't really get any benefits out of this. They're located mainly along the urban edge because they prefer lower levels of human activity. And again, we have a love-hate relationship with them. For example, the saltwater crocs in Colombo, which by the way have been here for years all over the waterways, are now starting to scare people because people have suddenly started noticing them. And finally, we have the urban avoiders. So these include a few of the omnivores and most of the large carnivores. So this includes the jackals, crocodiles, fishing cats, and rusties. They aren't expected to use anthropogenic resources and will only use them if they are migrating or dispersing. Because carnivores are carnivores, they have a very long history of conflict with people. For example, they'll eat people's livestock, they'll eat people's chickens. They just tend, or rather people just are scared of them. So, because of that, they're killed. So they do experience very high mortality rates, and due to that, decreased reproductive rates. Threats to urban wildlife, there are quite a few. The main one is wetland loss in Colombo. And Sri Lanka, for example, has 41 of the 2,300 globally significant wetlands. And since the 1900s, Colombo has already lost 60% of its wetland habitats. And we have a 1.2% loss per year. So that's really scary considering all the benefits that these wetlands provide us. Other threats that fishing cats face are roadkill, disease, pesticides and rodenticides, retaliatory killing, poaching, and wildlife trade, or the removal of fishing cats from the wild. Just an example about fishing cat roadkill. In 2020 alone, Small Cat Advocacy and Research got 25 reported fishing cat deaths, out of which 19 were roadkill. And in 2021, 17 fishing cat deaths were reported to us, and 14 out of the 17 were roadkill. So that's really, really high for a span of 1 year. So the Urban Fishing Cat Conservation Project, which is basically what we do, in 2013, after I kind of saw the wetlands around our area being cleared, I switched my work on the Sri Lankan leopard, and I began studying fishing cats full time. My project was to continue the work previously done by Balagalla and her team in 2007. And their project had to stop because of, it was kind of nearing the end of the war, so the security was high, so they couldn't really continue their work here. So my team's task was to reestablish the presence of fishing cats in Colombo's urban wetlands and monitor the population while using the species to promote the conservation of urban wetlands here. So one of the really cool things that we did was we confirmed the presence of fishing cats in hyper-urban areas in Colombo, basically metropolitan Colombo. Usually, we would hear people tell us that they've seen fishing cats, but it's really difficult to take that as a confirmed sighting because of such high levels of misidentification. So people will often think that fishing cats are the domestic gray cats that you see walking around, or they will mistake the small Indian civet for fishing cats. So until we have photo evidence, it's very hard to really say 100% does this species live in this area or not. So in 2015, we were fortunate enough to be sent these photographs by Eshan Vitana, who had a fishing cat, Mizuchi, catching fish in his koi pond. So if anyone wants to read that paper, you can either email me and I can send you a copy, or you could find it online. So the presence of fishing cats in Colombo's urban wetlands means that these ecosystems are in pretty good shape. I'm not saying perfect shape, but they're okay. There seems to be a very good network of wetlands to sustain this population, and a very good source of prey and shelter. But what's really interesting is how are these species actually using these urban landscapes? Why is it that Colombo is home to a top predator? Because usually hypercarnivores like fishing cats are usually found within the urban edge, and they will only enter, if they really need to. So there's something very interesting happening, and that's pretty much why we started this project and why we want to, do the work that we're doing. And basically just find out how our fishing cats are living alongside people. So to find out, Madhuranga and I, we were the only two on the project when we started, set out to kind of find out why Colombo was so special to our fishing cats and the rest of the 277 species of wildlife that call Colombo home. And to do that, we use several wildlife monitoring techniques, and a lot of them are non-invasive and pretty easy to do yourself. So I'll kind of go over that. So to monitor mammals, there are a number of ways, and these include, kind of visiting nesting and resting structures, and this is very easily done with birds. So you look for nests or burrows or any kind of structure built by, birds and mammals. So for example, the Parliament Lake, you've got really nice roosts of egrets and ibis and what are the other birds? Pelicans and stuff, kind of like roosting there. So those are really good ways of like observing those species. You can do area surveys, which is counting the number of individuals from the air. So they do that a lot in various African countries for elephant surveys. You kind of fly over in a helicopter or a very light aircraft and just count the number of individuals. You've got counting calls, which is listening to wildlife calling for a certain period of time. We've never really done that, so I'm not entirely sure how that works. Of course, you've got signs, which is identifying pug marks, scat scrapes, kill sites, things like that. Camera trapping, using a remote camera to monitor wildlife, and collaring and tracking. So on our on our project, we use signs, camera trapping, GPS collaring to monitor fishing cats and other wildlife in Colombo. So starting off with signs, this is literally the easiest way to look for the presence of wildlife. You basically just walk around and look for one of two things. And if you come across both, brilliant. But basically, if you're looking for signs, the fresher they are, the closer you are to the animal, because it just went past you, or it was in the vicinity a couple of minutes or hours before you were. So the first signs that we kind of look for are pug marks, and we're kind of lucky in Colombo because the only other animal we could mistake fishing cat pug marks with are dogs. So we look at several different components in a pug mark to differentiate the two. Cats have a leading toe, much like our fingers, where our middle finger is longer. So cats have a longer toe. So that will indicate the left or right foot. They also have a space between their toe pads and their plantar pads. Cats also have a trilobe at the bottom of their plantar pad. So it's kind of like a funny looking W, I guess. Whereas dogs, their top toes are aligned and they have the stereotypical claw marks. So pug marks will of course vary depending on the substrate. The deeper the mud, the nicer the pug mark. But of course, if the mud's slippery, you can get pugs that are a bit distorted. So these are fishing cat tracks in very nice deep mud. Here we've got fishing cat tracks in firmer soil and sandy soil. So you can see how different they look. And then we have fishing cat pug marks in extremely soft, soggy mud. And these kinds of pugs get really difficult to kind of differentiate because you could see the fishing cat's claw marks. And fishing cats have, their hind feet have semi-retractable claws, which get imprinted in really soft, deep mud. So that's when we kind of mistake them for dogs. So we have to then look at all, these different things to kind of make sure that we've identified the pug properly. The semi-retractable claws also aid in fishing cats when they dive into water. They kind of act like an anchor or a grip so that the cats don't go tumbling into the water from the banks that they're kind of sitting on. And another cat that has semi-retractable claws are cheetahs, because they need these claws to provide grip, which helps them accelerate faster and get a greater stride. So the next sign that we look for is scat, and I love scat. Anyone who's worked with me knows that I absolutely adore scat, and I get really excited when I see it. So scats are being collected to understand the diet of fishing cats in Colombo. And so far, we have identified some really cool stuff, which I can't really mention right now, except for the things on this slide. We want to know if fishing cats are eating the same things that their wilder not wilder, but there are other individuals in more natural areas are eating. For example, our sister project in Kandy, Safe Fishing Cat Conservation Project, has detected very little fish in fishing cat diet, but they saw a very large percentage of crustaceans, insects, and small mammals. And the reason for this is because in Kandy, up in the hills, there aren't lots of lakes, there aren't big rivers or streams. They've got these very small montane streams that kind of run down, so there aren't big fish. And another study that was done by Namphom Cutter in Thailand in 2015 showed that though fish were the main source of prey for fishing cats in her area, her study site, fishing cats did consume more birds during the dry season and more mammals during the wet season. So we kind of want to look at all these factors, considering Colombo has water throughout the year. We want to see if there are any dietary changes, throughout the different seasons in 12 months. And we want to see, what the percentage of species is that we find in these cats. So on the slide that we have here, we've got the top left, we've got porcupine remains. Top right, we've got some hair and bone. Bottom left, we've got feathers. I think it might be an egret. And the bottom right, we've got fish bones. So to analyze the hair samples that we find in our Scat fishing cat scat samples, we're currently working at the University of Colombo's Department of Zoology Immunology Lab in collaboration with Dr. Anya Ratnayaka and Dr. Saminda Fernando to analyze our hair samples. And to analyze hair, sorry, my dogs are scratching to get in. But to analyze hair samples, what we do is there's a process in cleaning it and making sure it's free from any debris, and then we look at it under the microscope. And there are three things you have to do in order to confirm a species, or at least partially confirm a species. The first is you look at this cuticular scale pattern, which is a strand of hair has scales, much like a snake. Think about it that way. And that's what you can see on the top left. You can see the scale pattern, and this is from a small Indian civet. The next is the medulla structure. So that's the structure inside the hair itself. Think of it as a straw that you have filled with Coke and you've kept it in the freezer. And the outside, the straw itself is the cuticle. Think about it that way. The frozen Coke inside is the medulla. And that's the pattern that you see here. And then you've got the the medulla cross section, which is if you cut the straw in half and you look in the middle, the size of the Coke, the frozen Coke, is basically the cross section. And in each species, every animal has a different scale pattern, medulla structure, and medulla cross section. So by looking at these three, you can identify different species. So that is what my team and I are currently doing at the moment. So you'll probably see lots of updates on that on the SCAR social media pages. So the next thing that we do is we do camera trapping, which is a non-invasive way to observe wildlife doing their natural behavior. And all you basically have to do is get yourself a camera trap, which are quite cheap these days, and you tie it to a tree, put in batteries, and let them do their magic. For our project, we have gridded out each of our 3 study sites, so the Viesaru Park, Baddegana, and the golf club. And in each of these grids, each of these 100-meter square grids, we have placed 1 camera, and those will run in that exact location for 12 months. And the purpose of our camera trap study is to identify the spatiotemporal changes of fishing cat habitat use across our 3 study sites, and to also understand any interspecific interactions between urban wildlife across these 3 study sites. So here are just some examples of species that we've got on camera so far. This is a small Indian civet. You can see it's really nice, long, ringed tail. You've got jackal. So this was actually at Talangama. We get, our endemic purple-faced leaf monkeys. Just, oh my God, they're like a pain in the butt when they're in front of the cameras. And then we also get species interaction. So over here, we've got a domestic cat and a porcupine walking, through a wetland side by side, which is really odd. But we've got lots of photographs of this particular duo. I don't know, maybe they're friends. I have no clue. And of course, we've got our fishing cats kind of doing their thing in the wetlands. Here we've got a female grooming herself on the side. So these are just things that we can get through camera trapping, and you have to always, when you set a camera, make sure you know what your angle is. So if we had just angled this a little more to the left, we would have got this cat grooming herself beautifully. Yeah, so that's that. Next is collaring and tracking, which is my favorite part of the project. So this is when we come and we fit our cats with GPS collars or VHF ones, like this rusty spotted cat collar that I've got around my wrist. And these collars allow us to get very detailed data on an individual animal's movement. These collars have to also be very light. They cannot exceed more than 3% of an animal's total body weight. So this is an example of a rusty spotted cat collar and a fishing cat collar. These are old fishing cat collars. We don't use these anymore because they're a bit iffy in the field in terms of collecting data. Our new collars, which are EOBS collars, are really, really light. They're about 150 grams, and we can, because they're so light, we're able to set them, or rather, we're able to put them on cats which are 5 kilos or more. So that means we're able to collar female cats, is this Wani over here. So this is the second female that we have ever collared in Colombo, and our EOBS collars are set to collect GPS locations every 10 minutes, giving us incredibly fine scale data and information about how the cat moved from one place to the other. So we could literally follow its exact path, which is incredible, because thanks to these collars, we have able to come across kill sites, den sites, areas where they've had kittens, and all sorts of, and we've just collected some incredible data of these collars. And once fitted, of course, we can't handle any of our cats without the presence of the wildlife department. So we have wildlife department vets on call and their handlers, and they are the ones who sedate the animals before I can get in and take the measurements, or rather my team takes the measurements while I attach the collar. And we have to have a valid research permit to do so. So once the cat has been collared, we make sure that the cat is 100% okay with the collar before releasing. So for example, if the cat shows any signs of distress, trying to take the collar off, rubbing the collar on the cage, we immediately remove it. All our cats have ignored the collar once the collars have been put on them. It's kind of like wearing a new watch for the first time. Kind of feels a little funny on your wrist for the first 15 minutes, and then you barely notice it's on you. So so we're very, very careful about how our animals react to being collared. This is also where camera traps come in handy, because it helps us monitor our collared animals. So here's Neek. She's kind of going about her business, about to mark her territory on that leaf and probably smelling the scent marking of another male. So as you can see, she doesn't even realize that there are collars around her neck. And the nice thing about our GPS collars is that they fall off. They've got like a little piece of cotton cloth that connects it to leather components. And after a couple of months, due to wear and tear, the cotton cloth frays and the collar just falls off. So there's no long-term effect on these cats when they're collared. The collars fall off within 12 months. So tracking fishing cats in urban landscapes is pretty hard work. I mean, it seems like it's easy because we are living in the city, so we have the comforts of living in the city, but it's actually not easy. We have to deal with collar signals being interrupted by all the high tension wires that we find around the city. The extreme heat also disrupts the collar signals, and radio towers and concrete block collar signals as well. So tracking cats is extremely time consuming and frustrating at times. Another thing that's really, really scary for us is every time we pass an army officer or a policeman or policewoman with our collar equipment, we all kind of like freeze a bit in fear because we're carrying antennas around the capital city. So having our permits and having all those things on us at all times is extremely crucial. But all that's worth it because I'm about to play some collar data from Neek and Wani. So Neek is blue, Wani is orange. So this is basically the kind of data that we collect from our collars. It just shows us exactly where these cats have gone over the span of 8 months. These two females are collared for that long. And it helps us understand two main questions that we're asking right now. The first is, what is the urban habitat use and home range of fishing cats in Colombo? And the second is, how do fishing cats modify their behavior and habitat use in Colombo's urban landscapes in order to avoid human presence? We've already answered question 1, and we've recently published a paper in Mammalian Biology. Again, if anybody wants to read this paper, please send me a message and I will email it to you. Unfortunately, it's not open source because we couldn't afford the open source rate, but I'll be more than happy to share it with you if you just let me know that you want to read it. In this paper, we found that fishing cats used highly urbanized areas more than we expected. So the majority of our locations were in urban spaces, compared to wetland spaces, cultivated areas, and open areas. We also found that fishing cats preferred vegetated areas so that they could avoid walking around in the open, especially when they were in urban landscapes. So for example, if there was a road, this basically slide is like a perfect example for this. So you've got your Japan Friendship Road, and the area closer to the Parliament Lake, the jogging track, none of our fishing cats walked along that side of the road. They all walked on the opposite side of that Japan Friendship Road because it had the wetlands and it had ground vegetation. Whereas the jogging path didn't have any ground vegetation, even though it was near the lake. And it was because fishing cats felt more vulnerable walking out in the open like that. So another really cool thing that the collar data allows us to identify areas where fishing cats frequently cross roads. And data like this could be used by the Road Development Authority or the Urban Development Authority when setting road signs or creating speed bumps when they're creating new roads or redoing roads or cleaning culverts so that wildlife can safely cross roads without having to risk getting hit by cars. All the information that we collect is also analyzed and fed to our local government stakeholders. And this information, we hope and we encourage that they use it for wetland conservation and green urban development strategies. These data can also be used to model more conservation or more robust conservation strategies for urban wildlife. So how can you help? One of the things that, I mean, we get lots of emails of people, asking us how they can help us in our work. Unfortunately, I can't really take a lot of people into the field with me just because it's not safe. They need to be on my permit. It just takes a lot of time from our team to make sure that people are safe when they're out with us. So a very easy way that you could help us is by reporting any of your small cat sightings, fishing cat, rusty, jungle cat, or even any other small mammal that you see. You can report it at save.cat, and this is our citizen science program that Small Cat Advocacy and Research has. So every sighting that you report, your name will be associated with it. And it's just a really good way for us to help. It's a really good way for you to help us keep track of the presence of these animals in our throughout the country. So if you'd like to help us, the website, the link is down there. It's https://save.cat, really easy to remember. Another thing you can do is follow us on social media and help spread awareness on fishing cats and their habitats. So share our posts, talk about our posts, get information from our posts, and kind of like teach your friends and family. So that's another really great way you could help us. And of course, there is the monetary side of it, and donations really help our teams continue working in the field, not just with buying equipment that we really need to carry out our work, but it also helps us save enough money to hire young biologists who are interested in working on small mammals and small cats, so that we can, get more information about our species and help protect them better. And finally, you can also apply to be an intern or a volunteer through our Small Cat and Advocacy and Research website. We're a little strict with who, at least my project's a bit strict with who we take on. We only take on biology or wildlife students. So you can get all the information there if you want to intern on our project. And that's about it from me. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And thanks again for being here. Sorry again about the not being live, but here are my email, the website, and our social media handle for anyone who wants to take it down and contact me for anything. Yeah, so moving on to question and answers. If anyone has, please feel free to ask. Thanks again, guys.